Hey, good morning again. This is Dre with Cubby One Drones. And again, I want to thank everyone who commented on the latest video I put out yesterday, which was Tuesday, concerning the Fourth Amendment argument. I hope you read uh, the circuit court brief at the top of the comments that states what I said in the video, that uh, national airspace is not under the Fourth Amendment. There is no expectation of privacy. But as I read the comments, and like I said, this like I say, when I click on your comment, when I click on everybody, because I read them, and I think it's important for us to read the comments on this subject matter so we know everyone's concerns and beliefs are being addressed. There was one comment that was made by a gentleman who said that how many rights are you willing to give up before basically he says where you want to stand up and stop it. And my response to him, just off my legal background, stated that there is no absolute right to fly in navigable airspace. And I thought about it and I said, well, let me verify my statement and give the qualifying backgrounds behind it. As I always say, put the facts there. Okay. So we're going to start off with the Federal Aviation Act of 1958. Uh, Prior to that, the United States had what we call the CAA, which was the Civil Aeronautics Administration. In May of 1958, Congress established the Federal Aviation Act, and voila, we have the FAA in 1958. Going from there. What I'm going to be using now is talking about navigable airspace and the rights to usage of that airspace. And I'm going to go over to what I like to use is the Cornell Law School Institute, which is probably one of the most renowned law school institutes in the country for online sources and information regarding the laws of our land and all the other agencies involved. And under Section 49 of U.S. Code, subsection 40103, sovereignty and use of airspace. A, number one, the United States government has exclusive sovereignty of airspace of the United States. Two, a citizen of the United States has a public right of transit. And I'm going to emphasize the word transit because I'm going to reference that with the Constitution. Public right of transit through the navigable airspace. To further that right, the Secretary of Transportation shall consult with the Agricultural and Transportation Barriers Compliance Board established under Section 502 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, subsection 29 of the United States Code 792, so on, before prescribing a regulation or issuing an order or procedure that will have a significant impact on the accessibility of commercial airports or commercial air transportation for handicapped individuals. Basically, this says you can't make any laws until you check with these different agencies, make sure they're not significantly impacted. There's nothing in this section that separates drones by itself, any type of drones. They're really going to be talking about aircraft, and that's why I tell people you got to, that's why that classification that we have as pilots and our UAS's devices are classified as aircraft, because there is not going to be any separate language that identifies drones by itself under this code. As you go on the code down to section B2, it says the administrator shall prescribe air traffic regulations on the flight of aircraft, including regulations on safety altitudes for A, navigating, protecting, and identifying aircraft. Registration numbers. B, protecting individuals and property on the ground. You only fly, most aircraft are not supposed to fly below a certain altitude. C, using navigable airspace efficiently, which is why in controlled airspace, we have levels of down to D, C, B, A, and then you have E. D, preventing collisions between aircraft and land or water vehicles, and between aircraft and airborne objects. Okay. Then it goes down to section 3, to establish security provisions that will encourage and allow maximum use of the navigable airspace by civil aircraft, consistent with the national security, the administrator, and in consultation with the Secretary of Defense, shall A, establish areas in the airspace the administrator decries are necessary in the interest of national defense. That's where you have no-fly zones around military bases, training areas, all this kind of stuff that can occur unless you get authorized permission. B, by regulation or order, restrict or prohibit flight of civil aircraft that the administrator cannot identify. So I can say again, if you cannot be identified, your aircraft cannot be identified, you fall in this category. And it goes on, can I identify, locate, and control with available facilities in those areas? Okay. This is all written back 1973. So don't get excited they come up with something new. Number 4, notwithstanding the military exception in section 553, subsection A, subsection 1 of Title 5, which basically means military aircraft and devices of such nature are exempt. And then it goes into foreign aircrafts and aircrafts of foreign armed forces and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, I want to talk about the connection between the Constitution and the FAA's language here. In the Constitution, it states that no one can be denied the right to use the public highway system in America for transit. Okay. And what that came about is the fact that, if states were denying people from New York to travel to New Jersey because whatever reason it is, they would be in violation of the Constitution. But it also left up to each individual state to set the parameters that allow its citizens and the vehicles to be on those highways, which it basically means your license plates on the vehicles. So in turn, and when I talk about this question, a person said about rights, there's a right that we can have to use the navigable airspace or the national airspace, but under provisions, which basically means it's a privilege to fly in the national airspace, just as it is a privilege to drive on a national or public roadway. It is not an absolute right. You can do whatever you want, but you must abide by these rules and regulations set forth by the governing body or / agency. So I can say I'm putting this information out there, so I don't want anybody to have a misconception, misbelief that their constitutional rights are being violated. They're violating the Constitution itself. They're violating whatever it is. So this is another issue, and like I said, this is why I read through the comments that are being brought forth, so we can talk about this, because I'm seeing videos out there in response to this thing that people are trying to refer to these different rights, refer to these different standards, refer to different things. And as I said in my last video, they're misinterpreting. I could be misinterpreting, but I believe I'm on the right legal stand here on this one, as with the other ones I've stated, because I'm not just going off what Draymond knows. I will put a link to this file right here and pin it to the top of the comments so you can read it for yourself and investigate it, because I don't want anybody to think this is just my beliefs, my ideals. I'm just reading and disseminating the information from the courts and from our legislators and everything else. So like I tell people, if we're going to change things, it's going to have to be through how we vote and how we interact with our legislators. Okay. These are how things get changed. How remote ID comes out, we know it's not perfect. We already know that. how we can start making changes is by interacting with those who are sitting in those seats, administrators and legislators, to inform them that this is having a impact on how we fly. Now, some folks take the attitude that I'm anti-FPV. No, I'm not anti-FPV. I enjoy a lot of the FPV videos. A lot of folks have been encouraging me to go FPV, but like I tell them, I said, until I find a strong need for me to have an FPV type of aircraft in my fleet, wing, or whatever you want to call it, for a standpoint to generate income for me, I don't see me going that direction right away. I like the style, the cinematic style that people fly in. That's very impressive. It's like I say, if I was working in more in a filming TV Hollywood mode, I would probably have a FPV type aircraft as part of my group. But that's not what I do at this time. Would love to do it in the future. So I don't want anyone to get it twisted that I'm anti-FPV. That is not the case. I'm just trying to make sure that you fully understand where we are at when it comes to these rules and regulations. I'm not naive to the fact that I know there are other players in the game who are trying to dictate what we can and can't do. And some of them players are even other I would say UAS companies who are trying to get other US companies banned and limited to what their actions are, which I think is a sad thing. But this is go to show this is the nature of the beast. But I want to make sure we know as individuals when we speak to someone who are in these positions, we should come from a position of knowledge of what the who, what, where, and why. We need to understand what the FAA is and what it isn't. We need to understand the legal laws, the rights and the limits of those rights that we have. So like I say, it's one thing to go up there and talk about your passion, your feelings, your opinions, but it's another to talk about what the law says, what the regulation says, and how that impacts what we do. So once again, this is Dre, Recovery One Drones. As you notice, I have never asked anybody to subscribe to my channel on this. I feel this is more like a public service thing, public service announcement that I'm putting out to anyone out there. So like I said in all of these videos, have a blessed day. Go out there and fly safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.